I'm just going to say, if you're a new viewer to the good news, and it is good news, I hope you understand that. The theme is good news here. But this has been a long time coming. And so I'm going to start saying things that go against the cultural norm. And I've watched YouTube. Everybody else is doing it. And I like my view, my scriptural worldview, better than anything I've heard. And I've been listening to a lot of them. But this makes more sense. This will lead you to a relationship with God. This will help you face the challenges of life and overcome and be fruitful. And really, it'll help you be the person you were meant to be. Find your destiny. Live out the dreams and the plans and purposes of your life that God had for you. So I'm not going to apologize for it, and I'm not going to run from it. I'm just tired of our young people being told a bunch of lies. I'm tired of them being deceived, and I have to bite my tongue. Maybe God gave me this outlet so I don't have to do that anymore. So I'm going to do it. I'm just going to tell you, this Finding God series leads us up to the Meaning of Life series, and it all goes against current thinking and the current steady diet of secularism that's being fed to our children in this culture. God created the universe. So when you believe that, there's a lot of things you don't have to worry about. When you believe that God created the world and God created the universe and God's in charge, not of every decision, and we'll get into that later. I'm going to do a series coming up here on why is the world in such a mess? Because it works really well with what I'm talking about now, because you might have already jumped to that conclusion. Well, if God created it and God's almighty and all powerful, then how come we're in such a mess? I'm going to explain that to you. But first, let's talk about God being behind it all. God's the creator. God is the one who dreamed this up. You wouldn't have a life if it weren't for God. You wouldn't be alive today if it weren't for God. So if you believe that, if you just accept a Genesis account of creation, let me tell you what you don't have to worry about. An asteroid from outer space colliding with the earth and knocking it out of its orbit. You don't have to worry about that. Why? Because God created it, and the Bible tells us how He's going to end it, and it's not an asteroid from outer space. It's not an alien invasion. It's not going to be the ozone hole. It's not going to be nuclear holocaust. See why? God created it. There's certain lines that He's not going to let crazy dictators cross. Even if they get their hands on a nuclear weapon, God's not going to let that happen. And we should do our best, but they're not going to end the world. I'm not saying there's not going to be war, and they're not going to be fighting, and there may be some really deadly things, and things happen, but I'm telling you, the world is not going to end because some madman pushed the wrong button and ended the world. We see Scripture. We see the end of the world in Scripture, and God's not going to end the world until He's finished with it. He started it, He's going to finish it. He's not finished yet. So you don't have to worry about asteroids from outer space. You don't have to worry about the ozone hole. You don't have to worry about carbon emissions ruining the planet. And because there's not enough atmosphere to absorb it, God created it with plenty of margin. See, that's something that comes along with believing God. Believing Genesis is that God knew what He was doing. How many discoveries do we need to make to know that God knew what He was doing? So no, we're not going to ruin the planet by our pollution. We do need to clean up our messes as best we can. But listen, they're trying to solve problems that don't exist. And they're denying or they're ignoring the real issues of life, which is at some point you need to meet God. People need to use this life to find and get to know their Creator. And that's really what life's all about. This entire universe was put into existence so that God could have a relationship with you. And that's the truth. That's really the meaning of life. I gave it away, didn't I? I guess we can stop this series and move on, because that is the meaning of life. And you could do anything else in the world, everything else in the world. You could be the most successful anything. But if you don't find God in the process, you've missed your destiny. You've missed the reason that you were born. And so we're here to try and get people back, make the main thing the main thing.